Hey, did you know across thousands of years, ancient warriors wore armor so refined and so precisely engineered that it barely seems possible for the times that they lived in? So in today's video, I'm going to count down 20 real historical armor sets that were pushing technology to its limits, and it still leaves experts impressed today. Let's start with number 20, the Dendra panoply. Found in 1960 near the village of Dendra in the Argolid region of Greece, the Dendra panoply dates back to around the 15th century BCE, and it's associated with the Mycenaean civilization. This discovery was important because it provided clear physical evidence of a full-body defensive system in a time when most surviving Bronze Age armor is limited to fragments or isolated pieces. The panoply includes a cuirass made of multiple carved bronze plates, separate shoulder guards, neck protection, and a long pair of articulated greaves. The breastplate and backplate are joined along the sides by hinges and leather straps, which formed a rigid shell around the torso. The shoulder plates extend upward and outward, protecting the upper body while also allowing some movement. The greaves are pretty nice because they rise high enough to cover the knees and incorporate shaped ridges that match the anatomy of a leg. The bronze belt section would have helped secure the lower plates. The curved shaping of these plates suggests advanced metalworking skills for this era, especially considering the difficulty of hammering bronze into large, smoothly contoured surfaces. Rivet patterns show careful alignment, and the attachment points for the leather straps show that the armor was meant to be worn securely rather than just ceremonially. But the suit does appear heavy and somewhat restrictive, and it leads to an ongoing debate about whether it was designed primarily for fighting on foot or possibly for use by a chariot warrior. Some Mycenaean art from the period depicts warriors wearing armor while riding chariots, and this rigid style of the Dendra cuirass is consistent with a combat role that required less mobility. Historians can't say with absolute certainty how widespread they were or what exact tactical role the wearers performed. But experts agree that the Dendra panoply was not experimental or symbolic, it was functional. Wear marks and construction details indicate real use rather than purely ceremonial purpose. The panoply was found in a tomb alongside weapons, including swords and spearheads, which does reinforce the interpretation that it belonged to an elite warrior. The presence of it in a burial context also shows the cultural value placed on armor like this. It represents both status and martial prestige. Number 19. The lorica segmentata. The lorica segmentata is one of the most recognizable forms of Roman armor. Used primarily between the 1st century BCE and the 3rd century CE, the lorica segmentata consisted of overlapping iron strips called segments, fastened together with internal leather straps and metal fittings. Some surviving pieces have been excavated at sites like Coleridge, Newstead, and Currantum, giving researchers some detailed information about how the armor was constructed and worn. It's based on horizontal bands that wrap around the torso, reinforced by vertical shoulder sections that help distribute the weight. These segments are shaped to curve naturally around the body, and each is connected by a system of hinges, buckle fasteners, and tie points. This kind of design allowed the armor to provide some significant protection while maintaining a surprising degree of flexibility. Archaeologists have identified several variations, often named after the sites where major finds were uncovered. The Coleridge type, for example, includes brass fittings and internal tie straps, while the Newstead type is constructed from fewer but larger metal plates. Differences between the versions reflect changes in Roman military supply and tactical needs. But one of the reasons why it seems so advanced is the precision required to create these curved iron segments that fit together without gaps. Metalworkers had to hammer iron sheets to uniform thickness, shape them accurately, and then drill aligned holes for rivets. They had to produce cast bronze fittings, hinges, buckles, rings, and they all had to be strong enough to withstand a battlefield. Contrary to popular belief, though, it wasn't universal among the Roman troops. Evidence suggests it was issued primarily to legionaries, not auxiliary units, and even then, not consistently across all legions or provinces. Chainmail, lorica hamata, and scale armor, which was lorica squamata, continued to be widely used alongside it. Why the segmentata eventually fell out of use is still debated, though. Some historians cite maintenance complexity maybe, while others suggest supply chain changes or shifting battlefields. And no single explanation is accepted, and the decline likely involved multiple factors. Roman artistic depictions sometimes show soldiers wearing the segmentata, but these have to be used cautiously because artists often stylized military equipment. Still though, archaeological finds confirm its use across several centuries, especially during Rome's expansion and early imperial peak. Number 18. Assyrian bronze scale. Used extensively between the 9th and 7th centuries BCE, Assyrian bronze scale armor is one of the most advanced systems of the ancient Near East. Excavations at sites like Nimrud, Nineveh, and Khorsabad have produced thousands of bronze scales, as well as intact sections showing how the pieces were assembled. They built their armor from small overlapping scales, typically bronze, though iron examples also appeared towards the later period, attached to a backing of thick linen or leather. When arranged properly, these scales formed a surface able to deflect slashes and absorb impacts, distributing force across multiple plates rather than a single point. This kind of scale armor wasn't unique to Assyria, but the Assyrians did refine it at a scale that's rarely seen elsewhere. Their armies were large, and equipping soldiers consistently required strong centralized production. Reliefs from Assyrian palaces depict soldiers wearing full tunics of scale armor, sometimes extending to the wrist and knees. In addition to the standard infantry, Assyrian cavalry and chariot crews use these reinforced variations. Some depictions show riders wearing scale coats combined with metal helmets and cloth padding, creating a multi-layered defense. The Assyrians did also emphasize protecting their horses, and several reliefs clearly show armored headgear and chest plates fitted to the war horses. It's one of the earliest large-scale examples of animal armor in military history. Despite their benefits, they had limitations. They could be heavy, and their flexibility was decreased as coverage increased. Repairs that were time-consuming because individual scales had to be replaced manually. But nevertheless, all their effectiveness in the field is well supported by evidence and military records. By the 7th century BCE, iron began replacing bronze in some Assyrian armor, though not completely. Iron scales were harder to produce consistently, but they provided better resistance to deformation. That switch reflects a broader change in metallurgy across the region, rather than a single technological breakthrough here. Number 17. The Samnite Triple Disc. Associated with the Samnite peoples who lived in southern Italy between the 5th and 3rd centuries BCE, the Samnite triple disc cuirass consisted of 3 circular iron plates, 2 on the chest and 1 on the back, connected by straps and fitted to the leather of a fabric harness. Actual surviving examples are rare, but enough fragments and complete finds exist to confirm the design. Each disc was hammered from iron into a shallow dome, often with a raised rim and reinforced edges. The 2 upper discs were positioned over the pectoral area, while the third covered the upper back. These discs were connected with leather or metal links, and additional straps secured the armor around the shoulders and torso. In some cases, decorative elements, including incised patterns or small bronze attachments, were added, indicating status and culture. Ancient depictions of Samnite warriors, especially on painted pottery, show the triple disc cuirass in combination with a large shield and crested helmet. These visual sources are limited, but they do provide enough detail to show the armor was part of a broader identity. Unlike the heavy bronze cuirasses or long-scale coats, the triple disc design allowed full movement of the arms and waist. The discs were symmetrical, evenly shaped and consistently sized, suggesting a standardized production method. Rivet holes around the edges show how the discs were secured without weakening the whole structure. There are some researchers that have noted that at a glance, the triple disc cuirass looks surprisingly modern because of its simplicity and modular construction. However, all available evidence supports its authenticity as a functional armor style from the pre-Roman Italian world. After Rome conquered the Samnite peoples in the 3rd century BCE, the triple disc cuirass gradually disappeared from use. Roman military equipment were emphasizing chainmail and standardized metal helmets, and there's no clear evidence that the Romans adopted this triple disc design. The surviving examples of the cuirass continue to draw interest because they show a distinct approach to body protection that was both practical and technologically refined. They are one of the clearest examples of pre-Roman Italian metallurgy applied to combat needs. Number 16. Scythian lamellar armor. Used roughly between the 7th and 3rd centuries BCE across the Eurasian steppe, Scythian lamellar armor represents one of the most advanced protective systems of its era. The Scythians, which were nomadic horse archers known from Greek texts, developed a form of armor that balanced mobility, coverage, and strength in a way well suited to high-speed cavalry warfare. Lamellar armor consists of small, rigid plates, typically iron, bronze, or rawhide, laced together through punched holes to form large, flexible protective surfaces. Discoveries in Ukraine, southern Russia, and Kazakhstan provide direct evidence of Scythian lamellar construction. The plates were often rectangular or slightly curved with 2 to 4 holes each, allowing them to be bound with leather or sinew cords. When assembled, the plates overlapped slightly, distributing the force and reduced the chance of penetration from arrows, spears, or slashing weapons. The plates were shaped with controlled thickness, and many show uniformity consistent with repetitive, skilled production. In higher status burials, lamellar sets were combined with felt or leather padding worn beneath the armor, creating a layered defense. But because mobility was essential to Scythian combat, lamellar armor served their needs far better than heavier bronze cuirasses used elsewhere. The layered plates flexed naturally when a rider twisted or drew a bow, and surviving examples show that armor coverage often extended from mid-torso to upper thighs. Helmets were made of iron or bronze, sometimes topped with animal motifs to complete the protection. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, described Scythian soldiers wearing iron scale or lamellar-type armor, and archaeological finds align closely with those accounts. Unlike many ancient armors that vary between regions or artisans, Scythian lamellar plates frequently match in shape and size across distant sites. The consistency shows a well-developed production system, possibly influenced by interactions with the other nomadic groups. The steppe cultures were not isolated. Metallurgical knowledge spread across thousands of kilometers, and Scythian craftsmen often incorporated the techniques seen earlier in steppe and Near Eastern cultures. As neighboring civilizations encountered Scythian forces, including the Achaemenid Persians, the Greeks, and later Sarmatian tribes, elements of lamellar construction spread widely. Although the Scythians left themselves no written records, their lamellar armor remains one of the clearest demonstrations of their technical skill and their adaptation to warfare. Number 15. The Greek linothorax. Used widely from at least the 6th to the 4th century BCE, the Greek linothorax is one of the antiquity's most unusual and sophisticated armor types. It wasn't made from metal, but rather of laminated linen, sometimes reinforced with leather or small metal scales. Although the exact manufacturing method has been debated for years, depictions combined with surviving linen armor from other cultures and experimental testing provide a reliable, factual foundation for understanding how it worked. The term linothorax comes from the Greek word meaning linen cuirass. While no complete Greek examples survive due to the perishability of these organic materials, ample painted pottery, stone reliefs, and written descriptions confirm its widespread use. Soldiers depicted wearing them include hoplites and even generals, with Alexander the Great often referenced in ancient sources as wearing a linen cuirass during campaigns. Most evidence indicates that the armor was composed of multiple layers of linen glued or stitched together. When tightly compressed, layered linen can form a rigid composite material capable of stopping or reducing the force of arrows, spear thrusts, and slashing blows. That typically featured a front and back panel, shoulder flaps, and a skirt of hanging panels that protected the waist and thighs. This design allowed for flexibility while also providing solid defense. But the absence of surviving Greek examples once led to a debate over whether the armor was predominantly textile or if it frequently incorporated hidden metal scales. Current information based on both iconography and experimental archaeology do support the existence of fully textile versions. Metal-reinforced versions are also attested but appear less common. Tests using reconstructions made from accurate materials show good resistance against arrows and edged weapons, and these tests, while not definitive, they do align with ancient battlefield accounts. The linothorax was lighter and cooler than bronze armor, making it more practical in Mediterranean climates. While it eventually declined in use during the Hellenistic and Roman periods, its design influenced later composite armors found in multiple cultures. Number 14. The Etruscan bronze muscled cuirass. Flourishing in central Italy between the 8th and 3rd centuries BCE, the Etruscans produced some of the most technologically refined bronze armor of the ancient Mediterranean. One of their most advanced creations was the muscled bronze cuirass, an anatomically shaped breastplate and backplate designed to fit the upper torso closely. A muscled cuirass typically consisted of 2 plates, a front plate sculpted to imitate the chest and abdomen, and a back plate molded to follow the shape of the upper back and shoulders. These plates were hammered from bronze sheets and then refined using chasing and repoussé techniques. The level of detail, the pectorals, the abdominal muscles, and rib lines isn't decorative. It's a result of controlled hammering, which produces stiffness where needed, and it redistributed impact forces across the curved surface. The plates were joined at the shoulders and side using bronze hinges, riveted loops, or leather straps. This allowed for a snug fit, but a functional one that protected vital organs while allowing freedom of movement. The Etruscans' mastery of bronze working is further demonstrated by the alloy compositions found in these excavated cuirasses. Analysis revealed carefully balanced tin concentrations, often between 8 to 12%, which resulted in bronze that was both hard and resilient. This balance allowed the armor to withstand the stress of hammering as well as battlefield impacts. The high polish on many pieces also served as a practical purpose by reducing corrosion and help deflecting blows. Etruscan armor does appear frequently in funerary contexts, often alongside high-status weapons, helmets, and shields. The presence of full sets in elite tombs suggests the cuirasses were symbols of rank as well as functional equipment. However, these weren't only ceremonial objects. Wear marks, repairs, and dents on several examples indicate real use. By the 3rd century BCE, as Rome expanded into Etruscan territory, this armor style gradually declined. But the Etruscan muscled cuirass does still stand out technologically as an ambitious design. It's evidence that pre-Roman Italy possessed highly skilled metalworkers, capable of producing advanced bronze armor long before standardized Roman equipment. Number 13. The Urartian bronze cuirass. Between the 9th and 6th centuries BCE, the kingdom of Urartu produced some of the most advanced bronze armor of the ancient world. Among the most notable finds are the Urartian bronze cuirasses, highly engineered chest and back plates created using casting and hammering techniques. An Urartian cuirass typically consisted of 2 large plates, one covering the torso's front and the other the back. The plates were shaped to follow the human body with defined curves around the chest and ribs. Their edges were thickened and turned outwards to prevent any cracking and to improve impact distribution. The most impressive feature of this armor was the casting quality. Bronze plates were created using molds that allowed for consistent thickness and precise contours. Large bronze shoulder guards connected with rivets or leather straps added more protection without significantly restricting any movement. Archaeologists have noted that the cuirasses were often accompanied by helmets, greaves, and weapons, which formed a complete high-status military kit. These helmets, frequently made using the same casting methods, had conical shapes or crested designs, and they often featured intricate repoussé detailing. Excavations at Carmier Bleu alone uncovered numerous cuirass fragments, helmets, and other fittings, implying a capacity for supplying elite troops. Written records and archaeological remains also point to centralized storage facilities where the armor was maintained and distributed. Urartu frequently clashed with neighboring powers like Assyria, and military strength was crucial to their survival. The quality of this armor reflects that, and Assyrian reliefs sometimes depict this style of equipment captured as spoils of war. Although Urartu eventually fell in the late 6th century BCE, likely absorbed into the expanding Achaemenid Empire, its metallurgical legacy continued to influence regional armor traditions. Number 12. The Hittite boar tusk helmet and bronze cuirass system. The Hittite Empire, dominant in Anatolia during the Late Bronze Age, produced sophisticated armor systems that combined organic materials, bronze components, and distinctive design choices. While no complete Hittite suit survives intact, multiple finds along with detailed depictions in Hittite reliefs and Egyptian sources provide reliable evidence of how Hittite armor was constructed and worn. The boar tusk helmet, known best from Mycenaean Greece, appears in several Hittite contexts as well. Excavations at sites like Hattusa have yielded boar tusks and tusk fragments interpreted as helmet components. These tusks were drilled and stitched onto a leather or linen cap, forming a rigid protective shell. Egyptian reliefs depict Hittite warriors at the Battle of Kadesh and show helmets with alternating light-colored panels consistent with boar tusk construction. For torso protection, the Hittites used composite cuirasses made from layered linen or leather reinforced with bronze scales or plates. Unlike fully metal cuirasses found in later cultures, Hittite examples seem to have balanced flexibility and durability. When attached to a textile backing, scales formed a protective surface capable of resisting cutting and reducing penetration from arrows or thrusting weapons. In reliefs and some records, elite warriors are shown operating heavy three-man chariots, usually a driver, a shield-bearer, and a spearman or archer. Armor was designed to protect these soldiers during high-speed engagements, while allowing enough movement to draw bows or control horses. This combination of layered cuirasses, strong helmets had offered protection without producing excessive heat or restricting vision. The Hittite Empire did collapse around 1200 BCE during the wider Late Bronze Age disruptions, and its armor tradition seems to have disappeared or merged into those of successor states in Anatolia and the Levant. But the surviving materials and cross-cultural depictions provide a clear picture of a sophisticated armor system. The boar-tusk helmet demonstrates high skill in organic craftsmanship, while the scale cuirasses reflect a well-developed bronze working industry. Number 11. The Persian Sparabara scale armor. The Achaemenid Persian Empire fielded one of the most organized and diverse armies of the ancient world. Among its earliest core infantry units were the Sparabara, shield-bearing troops who fought in structured formations behind large rectangular shields, or spara. While the shield was their primary defense, archaeological finds and artistic depictions provide solid evidence that Sparabara infantry also wore standardized scale armor. The best evidence comes from excavations in Iran, Turkey, and Iraq, including sites such as Persepolis and Susa. Numerous small bronze scales, tapered at the bottom, perforated near the top, match the shape shown on stone reliefs from Persepolis. These scales were arranged in overlapping rows to create a flexible armored coat, often reaching from the shoulder to mid-thigh. Because the scales were inexpensive to cast or hammer, Persian workshops could equip large numbers of soldiers with relatively uniform armor. Greek authors like Herodotus describe Persian infantry wearing scaled corselets, and the visual record supports this. Workers and guards on the famous Apadanda reliefs at Persepolis are shown wearing garments decorated with a fish scale pattern. Although stylized, the pattern does closely match the construction of actual excavated scales. The Sparabara formation functioned like a coordinated defensive line. Each soldier carried a large shield that could form a wall while the archers stood behind them. For this mixed formation to work effectively, the Sparabara needed torso protection that allowed a steady stance, some mobility, and reasonable endurance during extended engagements. This scale armor met those requirements. It protected the vital organs, distributed impact forces, and was easier to maintain than more rigid armor types. Because organic materials rarely survive, the textile or leather underlays of Sparabara armor are not preserved, but reconstruction based on surviving stitch holes and scale arrangements shows a structure similar to Near Eastern and Anatolian scale armors of the time. The fall of the Achaemenid Empire to Alexander the Great in the late 4th century BCE marked the end of Sparabara as a military unit, but the scale armor continued in use throughout the Hellenistic and Parthian periods. The Achaemenid version remains one of the earliest clearly documented examples of standardized infantry armor in a large multi-ethnic empire. Number 10. The Sarmatian Iron Lamellar Armor. A group of Iranian-speaking nomadic peoples, the Sarmatians, who dominated large parts of the Eurasian steppe between the 3rd century BCE and the 4th century CE, developed one of the most advanced lamellar armors of the ancient world. It consisted of small iron plates, usually rectangular or trapezoidal, punched with holes and laced together with leather or rawhide. When assembled, the plates overlapped like shingles, forming a protective yet highly flexible structure that moved naturally with a mounted warrior's body. Many plates discovered in Samaritan graves measure only a few centimeters across, but show remarkably consistent dimensions, suggesting an established manufacturing standard rather than improvisation. The Sarmatians' lamellar armor provided excellent defense without restricting the rider's ability to draw a composite bow, handle long spears, or maneuver at high speed. Several archaeological finds include full-length lamellar coats reaching to the thighs, as well as matching arm guards and helmets. While the Scythians often used bronze or hardened leather, Sarmatians relied heavily on iron. They produced hundreds of uniform iron plates that required specialized forges and skilled metalworkers. Analysis shows that many plates were cold hammered after forging to harden the surface, improving its resistance against penetration. Some plates also feature slight curvature, evidence that craftsmen intentionally shaped them for anatomical fit and structural strength. Roman encounters with Sarmatian cavalry had lasting consequences. After suffering heavy losses against Sarmatian cataphracts, Rome adopted elements of their equipment and tactics, contributing to the development of Roman heavy cavalry in later centuries. By late antiquity, Sarmatian culture dissolved into successor steppe groups like the Alans, but their armor-making traditions continued to influence Eastern European, Byzantine, and even early medieval European equipment. Sarmatian lamellar armor is now recognized as one of the most precisely engineered iron armor systems of the ancient steppe. Number 9. The Celtic iron chainmail. Celtic tribes of Iron Age Europe active between roughly the 5th and 1st centuries BCE produced some of the earliest known chainmail. Archaeological finds from sites in Switzerland and Romania and multiple French and British locations confirm that the Celts invented the form of mail that later became standard across the Roman Empire. This armor, made of thousands of interlinked iron rings, was technologically advanced because it required precise metalworking, heat treatment, and consistent ring construction. Typical Celtic mail shirts were composed of riveted rings arranged in a 4-in-1 pattern, which means each ring is linked to 4 others. Surviving fragments show uniform ring diameters, usually between 5 to 9 millimeters, and iron wire hammered or drawn through with consistent thickness. Many rings were flattened at the rivet overlap, improved their tensile strength, and prevented the rivets from slipping. Chainmail provided excellent flexibility and a strong resistance to cutting blows. When combined with padding such as linen or wool undertunic, it could also reduce the impact of arrows and thrusts. Reinforcement components like bronze shoulder pieces or decorative clasps appear in high-status graves and show both craftsmanship and social importance. Greek and Roman authors recognized Celtic skill in ironwork. Polybius and Siculus wrote about Celtic warriors equipped with iron coats of chain, and archaeological finds align with those descriptions. When the Romans encountered Celtic mail in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE, they adopted the design almost immediately. It became known as the lorica hamata in Roman usage and remained in service for nearly 2 millennia, an indicator of how effective the underlying Celtic design was. Some shirts extended to the mid-thigh while shorter versions reached the waist. Several examples include shoulder doubling or iron reinforcement plates shaped for the upper chest, improving protection where blows were most common. Mail coif and segmented iron helmets were sometimes worn alongside the shirts, forming a cohesive defensive system. After the Roman conquest of much of Celtic Europe, chainmail continued to evolve under Roman military workshops, but the fundamental design remained Celtic in origin. Today, chainmail is one of the clearest examples of advanced pre-Roman armor technology. The combination of flexibility and durability and large-scale production make it one of the most influential protective systems of the ancient world. Number 8. The Hoplite bronze bell cuirass. Used by Greek hoplites from roughly the 7th to the early 5th century BCE, the bronze bell cuirass represents one of the earliest highly engineered metal torso armors of classical Europe. Named for its flared bell-like shape, the cuirass consisted of a front and back bronze plate joined at the shoulders and sides. Archaeological finds from Olympia, Argos, and Corinth show consistent shaping, alloy control, and complex techniques to create it. It was formed from bronze sheets hammered into contours that followed the upper torso, while remaining rigid enough to disperse impact. Many examples show thickened edges produced by hammering the bronze inward to improve its strength and prevent cracking. That method shows careful control of bronze work and an understanding of structural reinforcement. The bell cuirass was used during a period when hoplite warfare relied heavily on close-order formations. A hoplite's large round shield, helmet, greaves, and bronze cuirass formed a set of overlapping defenses that were crucial to holding a phalanx line. The bronze cuirass provided strong frontal protection, especially against spear thrusts. Its rigid structure also helped redirect blows by forcing weapons to glance off its curved structure. By the mid-5th century BCE, the bell cuirass began to decline in favor of lighter armor, like the linothorax, which offered greater mobility and less heat retention. However, the bell cuirass continued to appear in certain regions and remained in use in ceremonial contexts for centuries. The bell cuirass is an early milestone in Greek military technology. The well-preserved examples show that archaic Greek metalworkers achieved significant sophistication long before the better-known classical period. It also represents a transitional point between earlier, simpler bronze plates and the more anatomically shaped cuirasses of later centuries. Today, the bronze bell cuirass remains one of the most recognizable examples of early Greek armor. It's highly engineered and fully functional in the hoplite battlefield environment. Number 7. The Chalcidian helmet with attached cheek and neck guards. The Chalcidian helmet, used across the Greek world from roughly 6th to the 4th centuries BCE, is one of the most refined metal helmet designs in antiquity. Its most advanced version, those featuring the integrated cheek pieces, a hinged or flared neck guard, and carefully sculpted facial openings, show a level of engineering that balanced protection with visibility, hearing, and comfort. Unlike the earlier Corinthian helmet, which fully enclosed the face and severely restricted peripheral vision and hearing, the Chalcidian helmet featured an open facial contour and pronounced cheek guards that followed the jawline. Analysis of intact specimens show that the helmet was hammered from a single bronze sheet or from two halves that were joined seamlessly, a technique requiring some precision to maintain consistent thickness. But the most distinctive feature is the neck guard, which often flares backwards to protect the upper spine without restricting the wearer's ability to look upward or turn quickly. This design improvement reflected a shift in Greek battlefield needs. By the 5th century BCE, soldiers were engaging more frequently in mobile skirmishes and cavalry combat, where situational awareness mattered as much as protection. The helmet's crest holders, usually riveted to the crown, allowed for horsehair crests that indicated rank but were structurally independent of the protective shell. Remains of padding attachment points on several excavated helmets, like those found at Olynthus and in Apulian burials, confirm that soldiers lined these helmets with wool or felt. This internal padding absorbed some shock and made long-term wear more comfortable. Decoration on Chalcidian helmets varied. Many were left plain for practical use, but high-status versions featured engraved motifs or patterns that were embossed ridges along the brow. This helmet eventually disappeared as iron helmets and later Roman types became widespread, but during its peak centuries, it represented a significant advancement in personal protection. Today, scholars view the Chalcidian helmet as a transitional but highly innovative design, one that combined visibility, clarity, mobility, and strong metallurgical craftsmanship. Number 6. The Anatolian iron scale armor of the Neo-Hittite states. After the fall of the Hittite Empire around 1200 BCE, several successor states, often called the Neo-Hittite kingdoms, emerged across southern Turkey and northern Syria. These states continued many Hittite traditions, but they also adopted newer Iron Age technologies. Among the most advanced was their iron scale armor, recovered from sites like Tel Tanianat and Karatepe. These finds show a shift from bronze to iron and reveal a surprisingly developed industry for the early Iron Age. The Neo-Hittite scale armor consisted of hundreds of small iron plates, each shaped with a curved lower edge and pierced with holes along the top for attachment. The plates were arranged in overlapping horizontal rows, sewn or laced into a textile or leather backing. This arrangement provided robust protection while retaining its flexibility, which was an essential quality for infantry and chariot crews. Producing this level of consistency in iron, which is harder to forge and shape than bronze, required controlled heating, repeated hammering, and careful slag removal. Metallurgical studies show that smiths used a low-carbon iron that could be cold-worked for surface hardness. And while artistic depictions are stylized, they do match what archaeologists have recovered: scale armor that covers the torso fully, often paired with pointed helmets and a large round or rectangular shield. The Neo-Hittite kingdoms occupied a region with significant military threats from the Assyrians and the Aramaeans, and their armor reflects that environment. The scale armor offered better balanced compromise between protection and mobility. A rare discovery at Tel Tayyanat includes scale armor found within a temple complex storeroom, suggesting organized storage and distribution. This does support the idea that Neo-Hittite states, though smaller than their Bronze Age predecessor, maintained a centralized military provisioning system. But today, the iron scale armor of the Neo-Hittite kingdoms is recognized as an important example of early Iron Age military engineering. It marks the technological bridge between the late Bronze Age armor and the iron-dominant protections of later Near Eastern empires, showing both innovation and an adaptation to a period of political change. Number 5. The Thracian Phrygian helmet with reinforced brow and hinged cheek pieces. The Thracians, who lived across parts of modern Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey from the early Iron Age through the Classical period, produced some of the most distinctive yet mechanically sophisticated helmets of the ancient world. Among their most advanced designs was the Phrygian-style bronze helmet, widely used between the 5th and 3rd centuries BCE. This helmet, recognizable by its forward curving apex, resembled a pulled-forward cap, incorporated reinforced brow ridges, articulated cheek pieces, and in some cases hinged or riveted neck protection. One of the most advanced features of the helmet was the reinforced brow band. Many surviving examples show a raised ridge above the eyes, created by repoussé work or by hammering the helmet's front outward. This ridge acted like a structural beam, dispersing the impact force and improving the helmet's ability to withstand frontal strikes. The cheek pieces, key to the Phrygian helmet's engineering, were often attached through hinges or riveted mounts. These cheek guards were shaped to protect the jaws and lower face while allowing free jaw movement and adequate breathing. Internal evidence does indicate that Thracian armorers used organic padding or leather liners attached through small perforations along the helmet's inner rim, and this padding absorbed shock and stabilized the helmet during fast movements, which was essential in Thracian combat, which involved skirmishing and rapid attacks. Several high-status versions were made of silver or gilded bronze, and while these elaborate versions were likely used for ceremonial or elite use, the construction techniques are consistent with functional bronze examples, showing that the Thracians possessed advanced metalworking skill. The helmet fell out of common use as iron helmets and Romanized equipment spread across the Balkans in the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE. However, its influence persisted. The forward curved profile appears in later Hellenistic helmets, and hinged cheek pieces became a standard feature in many subsequent designs. Today, the Thracian Phrygian helmet is regarded as one of the most structurally advanced types of the classical era. The combination of reinforcement, articulation, and careful shaping shows a high level of metallurgical control within these Thracian workshops. Number 4. The Qin Dynasty lamellar and plate armor. Known for unifying China, the Qin Dynasty produced some of the most advanced armor of the ancient world. Qin armor consisted primarily of small rectangular or trapezoidal plates made of leather, bronze, or iron, depending on soldier type and rank. These plates were pierced with evenly spaced holes and laced together using leather cords or plant fiber rope. This layering created a flexible yet strong protective surface, allowing soldiers to move freely while maintaining significant torso coverage. Thousands of lamellar plates recovered from the mausoleum exhibit nearly identical dimensions, thickness, and hole placement. This points to the use of a standardized mold or cutting template. Terracotta soldier statues provide additional evidence. The sculpted armor on these life-size figures corresponds closely with excavated lamellar fragments, indicating that the craftsmen depicted actual functional armor rather than artistic expressions. Infantry statues feature lamellar cuirasses with layered shoulder guards, while cavalry figures wear longer coats, allowing movement on horseback. The Qin also produced larger plate elements, including shoulder plates and rectangular cuirass components made from thicker materials. Though less common than lamellar pieces, these plates show careful hammering and shaping techniques. Qin armor was produced on an unprecedented scale. Evidence from workshop ruins near the mausoleum show standardized tools, casting pits, and storage areas designed for high-volume output. And functionally, it provided effective protection in the dynasty's military campaigns, which relied on coordinated infantry formations, crossbow units, and cavalry support. Today, Qin lamellar armor is recognized as one of the most systematically engineered armor traditions of the ancient world. The uniformity and mass production distinguish it from most contemporaneous armor systems in Europe and the Near East, providing a rare view of a highly organized military-industrial complex in the 3rd century BCE. Number 3. The Achaemenid Persian Immortal's quilted and scale composite armor. The elite infantry of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, commonly known as the Immortals, used one of the most advanced composite armor systems of the ancient world. While popular culture often exaggerates their appearance, archaeological evidence, classical sources, and detailed depictions from Persepolis provide a reliable factual picture of what their armor actually was: a layered textile cuirass reinforced with metal scales designed for mobility, comfort in varied climates, and organized mass production. Excavated scales, typically slightly curved rectangles or teardrop forms with a row of holes at the top for stitching, the scale rows overlap downwards, creating a flexible metal fabric that protected the torso, upper arms, and sometimes the thighs. Stone reliefs at Persepolis, among the most accurate depictions of the soldiers, show this armor clearly. The coats worn by guards and soldiers displayed the distinctive fish scale pattern known from excavated finds. The textile base of the armor was itself a major accomplishment. Thick, laminated linen or wool could absorb the shock and distribute the impact across a larger area. Surviving examples of ancient composite textile armor from other cultures showed that layer linen can be remarkably resistant to arrows and cuts. The use of composite armor reflects also deliberate engineering choices. The Persian Empire stretched across deserts, mountains, and plains. Soldiers needed equipment suitable for hot and cold climates, long marches, and combined arms warfare. The quilted textile offered insulation and breathability, while the metal scales provided directional protection without massive weight. The Immortal's armor also worked in tandem with the spara, a large rectangular shield carried by front-rank troops. Together, the shield wall and composite cuirass created a defense system suited for both missile protection and close combat. After the fall of the Achaemenid Empire to Alexander the Great, similar composite armors continued under the Seleucids and Parthians. The system remained influential across Western and Central Asia for centuries. Today, though, the Immortal's armor is recognized as one of the most advanced composite designs of its era. It's light, flexible, protective, and produced with a level of standardization that few ancient armies matched. Number 2. The Roman enslaved Celtic Caramanian Cataphract armor. While Rome is not typically associated with heavy cataphracts, several late imperial sources and archaeological finds confirm that Rome fielded heavily armored cavalry units influenced by Eastern Iranian and Samaritan traditions, particularly in the late 2nd and 3rd century CE. These troops, sometimes described as Caramanian or Samaritan-style cavalry, wore full-body armor made from iron lamellae, scales, and mail. The origins of this armor lie with Eastern Iranian nomads, including the Samaritans, the Alans, and the Caramanians, who developed full horse and rider protection using iron lamellar and scale structure. When Rome incorporated Samaritan cavalry auxiliaries, most famously after Marcus Aurelius settled thousands of Samaritan horsemen in Britain, elements of their armor spread into Roman military practice. The armor generally consisted of iron lamellar or scale cuirass covering the front, back, and sides, mail sleeves and leggings attached to the cuirass or worn beneath, segmented iron arm guards, iron or bronze helmet with face guards, sometimes featuring elongated nasal protection, and horse armor, including iron or rawhide lamellar chest pieces. Evidence from Dura Europus offers the clearest view. Several well-preserved lamellar plates were found in the city's military quarters, featuring pierced rows of holes along the upper edges and curved shapes for anatomical fit. The technology here is pretty clear in the engineering of the lamellae. Iron is difficult to shape in thin uniform plates without cracking. Surviving pieces show careful control of carbon content and meticulous hammering. Riveted mail integrated into lamellar structures also indicate sophisticated joining techniques that allowed for both mobility and comprehensive coverage. By late antiquity, the Roman cataphract units became increasingly common, especially under the reforms of Diocletian and Constantine. Their armor remained directly traceable to steppe and Iranian traditions, but was fully integrated into the Roman military structure. Number 1. The Kushan Empire's full iron cataphract armor. The Kushan Empire, which dominated parts of Central Asia and northern India between the 1st and 4th centuries CE, produced one of the most advanced and fully integrated cataphract armor systems of the ancient world. Kushan heavy cavalry developed out of earlier steppe Iranian traditions, particularly those of the Yuezhi and Tokhari peoples. By the time the Kushans established their empire, they had adopted a fully armored cavalry doctrine that relied on long Konsto-style lances, powerful horses, and armor for maximum battlefield shock. The armor itself was a combination of iron lamellae, mail, padded textiles, and reinforced helmets. The rider's typical armor included iron lamellar cuirass covering the torso, front, back, and sides, lamellar or mail sleeves protecting the arms, iron scale or lamellar thigh guards, full helmets with face and neck coverage, often made from multiple iron plates joined by rivets, and additional mail or textile padding beneath all the metal components. The plates are pierced along their upper edges and laced together with leather or fiber cords in an overlapping pattern. Analysis shows predictable low-carbon iron content with controlled work hardening, which shows a practiced knowledge of ironworking across a large number of plates. The most advanced component of Kushan armor was the horse armor, which is extremely rare in the ancient world but well documented for the Kushans. Depictions show horses covered in full lamellar barding, including neck plates, chest defenses, and protective skirts extending down the flanks. This lamellar structure allowed protection without restricting the horse's movement, which was critical for the shock tactics of Cataphract warfare. Chinese historians of the Han Dynasty who interacted with the Kushans along the Silk Road also described heavily armored dacia, the Bactrian Kushan cavalry, noting that both riders and horses were equipped with iron defenses. This matches artistic and archaeological sources, and it provides a reliable cross-culture confirmation. The technological demands of this kind of armor was considerable, producing thousands of uniform iron plates, shaping multi-component helmets, and creating horse barding required large skilled workshops. The Kushans positioned along major trade routes had access to iron resources and metallurgical knowledge from Persia and Central Asia, which allowed them to sustain this production. By the 4th century CE, Kushan Cataphract traditions influenced neighboring regions, especially the Gupta Empire and various Central Asian states. Their armor system helped spread lamellar techniques broadly across Eurasia. Today, Kushan Cataphract armor, confirmed through sculpture, cross-cultural documentation, and analysis, is regarded as one of the most complete and technologically advanced full cavalry armor systems of the ancient world.